It's very nice to talk to you again, Marshall, and nice to see you again. And Absolutely love this book on so
Thank
many
you.
levels. And One of the biggest reasons that I loved it so much is it's so in line with what we talk about, the melding of life and business, and how you really can't separate those. You've done a great job of proving that through your coaching and through your every one of your books. But I think you've done an even better job in this book than you've ever done before.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Absolutely. Just from the very beginning, there's almost a counterintuitive or satirical view of what is earned. And you really fly in the face of a lot of popular business rhetoric, so to speak, on what you think the earned life means,
Right.
and how to attain the earned life. So, first of all, great place to start. What do you mean by the earned life, and why do you
I
talk
would,
about it the way
I
you do?
actually, I'm actually going to read it, so I make sure I get it right. Now, what I mean by the earned life is we're living an earned life when the choices, risks, and effort we make in each moment align with an overarching purpose in our lives, regardless of the eventual outcome. And I think the counterintuitive part is the regardless of the individual outcome.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
people people tend to associate results as that's what everything is about, the results. And one thing I talk about in the book a lot is never place your identity as a human being based on results. Never make your value as a person based on results. And I talk a lot about that, and for two reasons. One is you don't always control the outcomes. There are thousands of variables you can't control. And number two, though, is you never get satisfied, because
Mm.
what happens after you achieve the results? Well, okay, you have to do more results and more results and more results. And it's kind of like the Buddhist term is the hungry ghost. You're always eating, but you're never full.
Hmm.
So it's looking at life as a process. And it's not that you shouldn't try to achieve things, but you don't place your value as a person based on achievement. John Wooden, the great basketball coach at UCLA, when I was there, said he never focused on results. He always said, do your best. He said, if you do your best and win, you should be very proud. If you do your best and lose, you should be very proud. And if you don't do your best and win, you have nothing to be proud of.
Mm.
So his focus was never on results. And also Coach K, the same thing. He had a great saying: next play, next play, next play.
Yeah.
And what that meant is the player would jump up and down and cheer. He'd go, next play, next play. The player would be depressed. Next play. You're not jumping up and down and cheering, and you're not depressed. You're not doing any of the above. You're focusing on the next play, because that's where we are. It's the next play, the next play. So, I think it's a great way to look at life.
And obviously two of the most winningest coaches in history, despite the fact that they had that perspective, and maybe because they had that perspective.
Another great coach that had that perspective was Phil Jackson, who was also a Buddhist.
Mm.
And same thing. He just said, just go through the process and you do your best and you make peace.
And you talk about that idea of being in the moment. I love the every breath idea.
Yeah.
That you talked about. Obviously, there's some Buddhist roots to that, but the essence of that, I think, goes beyond any religion or any theology or any even philosophy. It's a life idea. Talk a little bit about that and where you came up with that and how you came up with that.
Well, I'm not a religious or metaphysical Buddhist. I'm a philosophical Buddhist. And so my Buddhism is more psychology and philosophy than it is religion. The every breath paradigm is Buddhism basic premise is every time I take a breath, it's a new me. There is no such thing as this fixed you that's the same person all the time. Every time I take a breath, it's a new me. New me, new me, new me. And everything that happened before this second in my life was done by an infinite set of people called the previous me's. The previous me's. And I think it's a really healthy way to look at life. For everyone that's listening right now, take a deep breath. Now think of all those previous yous, all of those infinite set of previous yous. Think about all the gifts they've given the you that's listening to me right now. Think about all the nice things they've done and think about how hard they tried. If any group of people did that many nice things, what you just say to those people? Thank you. Just say thank you. Now, did they make a little mistake or two? Let go, let go. Who's the first person we need to learn to forgive? Let's forgive this person. Let's forgive this person. And I think it's a great way to look at life because you're in a constant restart mode.
And, when you, obviously this relates to everything you do in life, but, what we believe in social capital is that, you should live your best life at work as well as when you're not at work. And, this idea of living this way, I think can be so powerful in your business. You have a chapter called Credibility Must Be Earned. And,
right.
Talk about that a little bit, because I think that's so integral to all this and how it connects to business.
Well, the chapter says credibility must be earned twice. And what happens with that is, credibility is this quality of being trusted, people believe in you, and credibility is obviously a good thing. But being earned twice means, one, you have to be competent. Two, though, you have to be recognized as being competent, which is not the same thing. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between I'm competent and I'm recognized as being competent. For my book, for example. Now, I like my book, and I think it's a really good book. I'm very proud of it. It's also a New York Times bestseller. Why? Because I promoted the heck out of it, right? Mm-hmm. It's a New York Times bestseller by accident. I worked hard. Well, I'm not ashamed of having to promote my book. So in the credibility matrix, Peter Drucker taught me a great lesson. He said, our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove how smart we are and right we are. Most of us never understand that. We just go through life proving how smart we are over and over again, as opposed to saying, why am I doing this? Then he said, every decision is made by the decision maker. Whoever has the power to make the decision makes the decision. Make peace with that. And if I need to influence you and you're the decision maker to make a positive difference, you're the customer and I'm a salesperson. Sell what you can sell, change what you can change. If you can't sell it, you can't change it. Let it go, make peace. So in the credibility matrix, I talk about two dimensions. One dimension is called proving yourself. And, if you do a Google search on a need for approval, and the first 80% of all the hits are some kind of psychological dysfunction. Because if somehow we need approval, we have a psychological dysfunction. Hello, we all need approval. What kind of planet is it? If our ancestors didn't get approval, they died. It was pretty simple, right? Option A, you get approved, or option B, you are dead, right? So our need for approval is very, very deep, almost genetic, right? Babies learn need for approval before they learn how to talk. They learn to look at faces before they learn how to talk. So need for approval is a very deep thing. The question is, though, when do I strive for approval? And when do I not strive for approval? Now, I talk about overselling, underselling. Then I talk about gaining credibility and letting go. So the four dimensions. Overselling is you're trying to prove yourself when you don't need to. You're doing too much of this striving for approval when there's no point to it. My book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, is largely about overselling. Winning too much, adding too much value, being right all the time. And the reason is most people I coach are men. Most of them are hugely successful, and very few of them, to be honest, need to go to the assertive training program. So, they're more than capable of expressing their opinions. Their problem is not expressing their opinion. Don't do it too much. Then I wrote a book with Sally Helgeson, though, called How Women Rise. And that book is about underselling. It's about how many women don't promote themselves enough and that they hold back too much. And so with people that undersell, I have a great technique. I've been practicing. I did it today with a group of women. I was working with Sally today. So we had this large group of women and they were like 90% said they undersell. So I asked them three questions. Question one is, if you became more powerful and influential, would the world be worse off or better off? They almost all said better off. I said, well, I'd probably agree. Then I said, does trying to be more powerful and influential make you feel uncomfortable? Oh, yes, makes me uncomfortable. So then I asked the magic question, what's more important to you? Making a positive difference in the world or being comfortable? It's like, boom. All of a sudden saying, wait a minute. Why am I bragging about not promoting myself when the reality is, in my heart, I believe if I did become more influential, I'd make a better difference in the world. So, what am I doing here? Am I interested in my own comfort? Well, it makes a very deep point for many people. So then the other thing I talk about, building credibility that's when you are trying to prove yourself, and it's worth it. To me, I work very hard at proving this book. And I'm happy I do that because I think the book is making the world better. Now, the final box, though, I also like, and that's called Letting Go. And my friend Alan Mulally is a master at this one. He has to say, Alan was the CEO of Boeing Commercial Aircraft, then Ford, one of the best CEOs ever. And he has a great saying. Before he talks, he breathes and asks a question. Am I the world's expert on this topic? Is there anybody else around here who knows more about this than me? If the answer is yes, then he always asks the second question. And why am I speaking? Why am I speaking? If somebody else can answer this question as well or better than me, explain to me, why am I, the CEO of this company, talking? Because Alan is very smart. He knows if he talks, what are people going to do? Yes, sir. Alan says, have you thought of this? What are they going to say? Alan, I just thought of it. I think it's a great, yes, sir. Great idea, Mr. CEO. And they're going to go out and do it. I mean, JP Garnier, my coaching class, said, my suggestion, you're a CEO, your suggestions become orders. And, having that discipline to breathe and say, excuse me, why am I trying to prove myself here? And sometimes it's just not worth it. Don't, just shut up. Just shut up. And then conversely, for the undersellers, I say overselling, and then undersellers, I say, why aren't you trying to prove yourself more? And then sometimes the people, the underselling, have this ridiculous phrase they've heard. My good word should speak for itself. You ever heard that phrase? It's the most nonsense phrase.
What does that mean?
God is supposed to fly out of the sky and recognize you for your specific good work. If that were true, no company would have a marketing function. Why bother with the marketing? Just do good work and it all speaks for itself. That's not the real world. So I like that building credibility where it says we all want to prove ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is when? Why? When and why are we doing this? And sometimes the answer is a good idea. Sometimes the answer is it's a stupid idea.
Well, I love that litmus test for it, though, of, a greater purpose, right? And what is my point in doing this? What is my purpose in being here? And, if I'm going to make the world a better place, if it's going to make a positive difference, then I need to go out there, and no holds barred, just push forward because I have a grander purpose.
Well, one of the great CEOs that you may have met is Hubert Joly, who was CEO of Best Buy. Just also a fantastic guy, but I'm very proud of him. He wrote a book called The Heart of Business. And I know a lot of CEOs that after they leave write books. And a lot of them have this attitude, well, I don't really care if it sells a lot, or I'm not going to try to promote it. I'm going, well, then why are you writing it? Why are you writing it for yourself? Well, the reason they say they don't care if it sells a lot is they're afraid it won't sell. They want to make an excuse before they begin. But Hubert, to his credit, I said, don't do that. If you're going to write this book, you go out and bust your butt. And he has. He really worked hard to promote that book. He's done a great job of it. And I'm so proud of him because he got over his ego. Part of that, I shouldn't have to do this, is my ego. I think it's lowering myself to have to go out and sell something. And he said, no, I'm going to go out and sell this book because I believe in it. And I love that, as opposed to another CEO I worked with who said, well, I'm not going to spend any time marketing the book. I'm fine. Don't expect anybody to buy it. And they, by the way, and they didn't. Book sold 12 copies, right? Well, you wrote a book that no one bought. Okay, big deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that on so many levels. As an author myself, I've written 5 books and, I always say once the book's done, okay, 10% of my work is done now. And, then I, have to go on to promoting it and selling it because you don't get anybody to hear about it or nobody reads it. It has no value,
Well, I tell you, I don't know if you know this statistic, but on Amazon.com, they have 32.8 million books.
Yeah.
You know how many you have to sell in a year to be in the top half of all books? The answer is 2. Yeah.
I did not know that statistic. That's a pretty outstanding statistic.
Yeah. 16 million sold 0 or 1 last year.
Yeah.
You sell 2. Mommy and daddy both buy it. You're right there in the top half, right?
Yeah.
And you just got to sell 2. Well, and I am not arrogant enough to believe that my book is better than 16 million other books. I'm sure some of those books are way better than anything I ever did. You know what? No one's ever going to read them.
Yep. Yeah. Attaching that whole greater purpose, I think great lesson for authors, and certainly though great lesson for CEOs, for business leaders. And it attaches itself to something you also talk about, the idea of empathy. It's one of the last things that you talk about in your book. And, I think, again, if you really are thinking about your purpose in the world and your greater purpose, you have to have a sense of empathy with those you are leading. Talk about how you came to that conclusion and why you think that's so important.
Well, empathy, my empathy chapter is very different, because most people think of empathy as warm and fuzzy and puppy dogs and hugging things and all good, right? I talk about two sides of empathy, the good side and the dark side. Mm-hmm. And I've studied this, and just in the last couple of years, I realized empathy has a very large dark side to it. So I'm going to talk about 4 types of empathy. Then I'm going to get back to your point, the importance of what's called singular empathy. The first type of empathy that's called the empathy of understanding. I understand where you're coming from. And again, makes sense. I'm a coach. I'm probably very good at that one. I have very good at understanding people's motivations, sometimes better than they do. And that can be very useful. On the other hand, it can be manipulative. I mean, advertisers have a great empathy of understanding. Budweiser spent hundreds of millions of dollars on advertisements featuring a little dog and a horse. Now they know they're not throwing that money away. They know they're going to get more than that, hundreds of millions back from people buying beer. Do you actually think any man goes in to buy beer and says, I'm buying this beer because I love that little doggy? Nope. But that is exactly why they're buying the beer. You know why? They understand their mind better than you do. Propaganda people, very good at the empathy of understanding. They can manipulate you. Sociopaths are good at the empathy of understanding. So, it's something that can be very positive. It can be negative. The second one is the empathy of feeling. I feel your pain. That sounds kind of glorious. I feel your pain. Could be good. I can understand you better. Alphonse Gentil, one of the coaches in my group, says, it's good that I can touch your pain, but I don't want to live with your pain. Look, let me give you an example. I'm the coach of Dr. Patrick Frias, who's head of, I'm a volunteer, head of the Children's Hospital in San Diego. He said the first 2 months, he was a medical doctor, he drew a bad straw and had to work with dying children. And he said he used to go home and cry every night. He went home and cried for 2 months. He finally had to realize, I can't carry this around. I can't do this and do my job. Dr. Jim Downing, I'm a volunteer for Dr. Jim. He's the head of St. Jude's Children's Hospital. He has to see kids die all the time. He has to deal with their parents who are dying. He can't carry that home. He's got a wife. He's got kids. He's got grandkids. He's got a life. And if he carries that stuff around, he can't do his job. So he needs to be able to block that stuff out and get away from it. It's good to a point, but only to a little point, not too much. The third empathy is the empathy of caring. Now, this is a chapter I love. That sounds good. I care about you. You think I'm going to do better. And normally, of course, it is good. People that care, you think are going to do better than people that don't care. And the answer to that is maybe. Let me give you two. The example I love in the book is the hedge fund manager of all things. Now, the last person in the world you think would have trouble with caring too much is a hedge fund manager. They're stereotypically the least caring people in the world. All you care about is money, right?
Right.
I'm watching a guy worth $1 billion interview another guy worth $3 billion, two hedge fund guys, right? This is a long time ago when $1 billion was a lot of money. So I'm watching this, and the $1 billion guy asked the $3 billion guy, why don't you have a fund anymore? And the $3 billion guy said, I'm not as good as I was. He said, why aren't you as good? You had more experience. You know so much. You're a smart guy. He said, I started caring. Now, he said, when I was young, I didn't care. Now, I made, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I lost hundreds of billions of dollars. I made 52%. I lost 48%. That's why I'm rich. As I grew older, I started caring. I thought, this is somebody's retirement account. This is some kid's college. You know what he said? I became much more conservative and much less effective. That's why I quit investing in other people's money. I wasn't as good. That's why medical doctors can't operate on children. Why? They care too much.
Yeah.
That's why we have, after COVID, huge burnout problems in the healthcare world. People couldn't let go. They couldn't let go of the care and couldn't let go of the feeling. And then the final empathy is the empathy of doing. I not only care, but I do. When on the surface, that's good. You're helping others. One of the women I know that's in my group, she's a wonderful human being. She said her biggest problem in life is she's a fixer. Anyone has a problem, they come to her and she solves it. She said, I create people who are like children, dependency, can't let go. A lot of founders have that problem. They're going to fix all the problems themselves. Well, that's okay to a point. But when do people learn to fix their own problems?
Yeah.
So basically, then I said, what is the thing about empathy that's most important? And this is something I learned from Telly Leung. So over COVID, I spent 60 people, 6 hours, my friend Mark Thompson and I, every weekend, 6 hours, rotating groups. Amazing people, Broadway stars, athletes, people from around the world, CEOs, head of the Rockefeller Foundation, World Bank, on and on, amazing people. One of them was Telly Leung. Telly's a star. He's, the play Aladdin?
Mm-hmm.
He played Aladdin on Broadway in the play Aladdin 1,000 times, literally.
Mm.
So I talked to Telly and said, how you do it? Well, he said, I have to demonstrate empathy. Now, Telly's gay, but he says, I'm not gay when I'm in that role.
Mm.
I love that princess every night. I love her. I'm not gay then, right? And I may be gay when I go home, but not when I'm up there. I'm not. And I said, how do you motivate yourself 1,000 times to do the same play? And told a wonderful story. He said, when I was a little kid, 8 years old, and maybe he didn't have such a good time when he was a little boy, I went to a Broadway play. And they had this beautiful singing and dancing and lights. And it was so wonderful. I felt so happy. He said, every night I go out on stage, I think of that 8-year-old boy. Every night. And I said, this is for you, kid. Every night. And to me, that's what empathy should be. It's not, do I feel someone else's pain? And it's not, am I a hero? Or let's talk about how sensitive I am. It's really, what are you thinking about that other person? And what we don't think about empathy, it works two ways. Yeah, we want to have empathy for others. On the other hand, we don't think, what am I creating in them? And Telly's definition, which I use in a book, is called singular empathy. Am I being the person I want to be right now? In other words, am I being who I need to be for you right now? Not am I talking about my mother died last week, or not am I talking about all my problems? Am I being who I need to be for you? And one of the women in our group is Marjo Georgiadis. She sold Ancestry.com for $4.7 billion. She's a great leader. And she said, on these Zoom calls, she said, this may be the least important Zoom call of the week for me, but maybe the most important for them. Mm. Every call she gets on, am I being who I need to be for the people on this call? So when we think about empathy, we often think about, how do they make me feel? What we don't think about is, how do I make them feel? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And many founders, they come home every night and talk to their kids about how miserable they are, how hard they work, and how miserable they are. Then they wonder, why doesn't my kid want to run the business? Wonder why. Kids, I don't want to be you. You're miserable, right? So I love the idea of empathy, but thinking not just, how do they make me feel? How am I making them feel? Another example, St. Jude's Children's Hospital. I go there. And have you ever been there?
I've never been there. No. I love what they do, but
it's amazing. So my first instinct when I went there was to start crying. I mean, it's just tough. I mean, it is not easy to be around dying kids.
Yeah.
And, Dr. Downing told me, never do that. That is the worst thing you can do for that kid. The little kid comes and sees you, and as soon as you see the kid, you start crying. Makes the kid feel like a monster.
Yeah, sure.
Makes the kid feel terrible. Well, you might think I'm being sensitive. No, you're not being sensitive. If you were being sensitive to that kid, you wouldn't be crying right now. You're being sensitive to yourself. Yeah, you're saying, here's how the kid is making me feel. Well, what about how you're making the kid feel? Maybe that's more important than how the kid's making you feel. And it doesn't matter how the kid makes you feel. You're not dying. Suck it up.
Yeah.
Suck it up. Think about the kid more than yourself. And it's just a great lesson, and one that we often don't get. And back to the every breath paradigm, breathing. Am I being who I need to be for this person right now? Not how do I feel now? What am I doing to them? How am I making them feel right now? And one of the things we don't think about in terms of being happy is when we're miserable, we tend to make other people miserable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got two funny stories from my group. One of them is Dr. Raj Shah. Now, Dr. Raj is a great guy, head of the Rockefeller Foundation. He's in one of these Zoom calls, right? And he's been trying to do this deal, which is a billions of dollar deal, and really it's going to help the world. And he closes the deal, and he's so excited. Of course, he's at home. So he goes out of the Zoom call. He's jumping up and down. We did it. We did it. His daughter just got dumped by the boyfriend, is crying. His son's lost his computer and he's distraught. And his wife is totally pissed. And they'll look at him and think, what a jerk. What a jerk. All you care about is work, totally insensitive to us, and he forgot where he was. He was still in the Zoom call.
Yeah.
And hey, they weren't in the Zoom call. And how you felt in that Zoom call is nice, but your daughter's in pain, your son is in pain, and your wife is in pain. This is not time for you to do a victory dance. Mm-hmm. You're just missing the audience here. And, it's always good to think about that. And what am I there for the other person? Not how do I feel? And then another funny story. Pau Gasol is a basketball guy. Mm-hmm. He played for the Lakers. He's a world champion basketball guy. And he's a great guy. So his wife wants him to be more present and sensitive, right? So right. Every week, it's like this is Alcoholics Anonymous for successful people. Every week they get up and tell stories. And we all, we screw up every week. Everybody does. And he says, last week, not so good. Mm-hmm. My wife's very upset with me, She said, you're not like checked out. You're not really present. And he said, but Marsh, I was working out so hard. I was exhausted. I'm trying to make the Olympics. I'm 40 years old. I was tired. I said, I'm tired. How tired were you, pal? Oh, I was so tired. That's fascinating. You were tired. I said, I spent $1,000 one night, and my son spent $1,000. We got two tickets to see you play the Boston Celtics in the World Championship game, which you won. And you were running up and down the court like a banshee. Were you tired? Oh, he says, you can't believe how tired I was. Phil Jackson called timeout with 2 minutes to go, the coach. Did you go to Phil and say, Phil, I'm tired. A little tired. I'm tired, Phil. Maybe you better take me out, buddy. I'm feeling a little tired out there. What he said? I have never told a coach I was tired my entire life. Never. Mm-hmm. Then I said, do you think your wife is impressed?
Oh, that's excellent. I love that story.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that story.
I'm tired. Oh, yeah, sure you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a life. Well, it's hard. By the way, this stuff is, it's not so hard to understand. It's hard to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I love the way that connects everything back to that every breath, being able to not just understand people, but know, what they need from you and at that moment, what the world needs from you, attaching that bigger purpose. I mean, all that comes back. It's like this giant circle, right? Then it gives you if you can think about that, it gives you a little more motivation to live in that moment and be what you need to be in that moment, for those people. And gosh, I mean, this is a lesson for everyone, obviously, right now. But, what a great lesson for leaders, business leaders who, I think the business community has a greater responsibility and a greater ability now, probably than ever before in the history of mankind, to be there for their employees, for their customers, for the people in our society, and what an invaluable lesson for them to be able to learn how to do this.
Well, the concept of stakeholder-centered leadership. I'm helping my friend Alan Mullally with a new book on this, and Alan to me was the role model of the stakeholder-centered leader. He really was big on doing what's good for society, doing what's good for the world. I mean, he looked at all the stakeholders and we're going to maximize benefit here for the stakeholders of this organization. And it wasn't just talk. He measured everything and they actually did it. They did it. They talked about environmental impact. They talked about employee engagement. He did it all. He didn't just talk it all. And everything went up. And, Alan is just a great guy, but I've got to say, I've known him for years. How many times have I ever seen him? Poor me. I'm a victim. I'm down. I don't feel good today. How many times I've seen that in 30 years? Zero.
Huh.
No, he doesn't do that. No, there's no victim. There's no poor me. Frances Hesselbein, CEO of the Girl Scouts, Peter Drucker said the greatest leader he's ever met. She's 106. I've known her a long time, probably almost 40 years now. And you know what? She's always thinking of that other person. This is never about, let me tell you my problems today. No, she's always thinking of that person she's with and, how can I help this person?
I love that. Absolutely love that. We were going to have you talk in one of our panels on authenticity and scheduling issues and whatnot. But we definitely have to get you back to talk about that because you are one of the most authentic coaches that I've ever known in my life and ever had the honor to speak to. So thank you so much for taking this time for talking about this really amazing book. And everyone who's watching needs to buy this book, and it'll change their lives. It'll change their business, everything else. I applaud you so much for writing this. So, and we need to get you back here talking more often.
Look, I'm happy to do it. You guys are doing wonderful work. Very honored to be associated with you. You're doing wonderful, wonderful work. And back to that Peter Drucker point. Look, here's my theory about the skull. As I've grown older, my life's getting kind of simpler, right? I just want to help people have a little better life and the people around them have a little better life. So let's just imagine that a few people listening to this call have a little better life because of this call. And then maybe they help a few others have a little better life. You know what? This is a good call.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, right? So thank you, Marshall. Hey, it's been such a pleasure, Marshall. Hey, take care. Keep doing what you're doing. And we will talk to you soon again.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.